Brinan Dar, good afternoon. I'm like an Irishman speaking Welsh, eh? Right. What we have here is a stone. Or is it a stone? Is it something that we picked up from the landscape? Is it something that could be used as a form of inspiration? Something that we would look at and think, and maybe transfer it? Indeed, something like this, a ceramic object, an artifact. And this is what my talk is all about, to go from the stone to the artifact, but more importantly, the preconceived idea of landscape and the way we view it as a form of creativity. Like all good stories, there's a start, a middle, and I don't really go on about the end, but yet I'm far too young for that. So the start is when I grew up in Derry, Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And there was good fun. There was sort of good bits, bad bits. There were interesting bits. But I found myself, and we found ourselves walking through the hills around it, through the landscapes themselves, through, sort of walking around the hills of Donegal and the hills of Derry, looking at the standing stones, looking at the stone forts, looking at how landscape has been scarred. And we thought we were good teenagers. We thought we were it. We thought we were the 20th century kilts, like Clannad playing in our headphones and a bottle of cheap wine. We thought we were there. We were it. And then, so that was, and drawing work from that landscape. And also, round about the same time, I was also introduced to this thing they call mud or clay, the posh word for it. And for me, this was like an epiphany. Suddenly I thought, I don't have to paint things. I can actually make things. And the best way to describe these making things is like we made cocoons. And we got our cocoons and we put our cocoons into the kiln and we closed the door. And 2 or 3 days later, we opened the door and hopefully our cocoons would have been turned into beautiful butterflies or moths. Okay, you can still get nice moths as well. So much so, I'd be fascinated with this clay bit. So much so when 10,000 years ago when I did my A-levels, I ended up getting an A star in my A-level and a D in my ceramics. So everybody thought I was going to wander the hills as an artist painting. I went, no, I like this playing with mud business. And also sort of like using landscape as the source. I found that exciting. And then when I left Belfast, where I did my degree, and I ended up in Wales, and that was maybe not 10,000 years ago, but that was a while. That was in South Glamorgan Institute of Higher Education. Shows you how long ago that was. And but I became totally sort of like fascinated by sort of like the landscape here. And I thought, is it the landscape, or is it the way we view the landscape? Because if you look out and you think, this is all natural, this is all beautiful, this is all back to nature. Or is it the way we view it is being dictated? Like the landscape itself is like a contradiction. Like we all have a favourite spot where we sort of like maybe go out, sit outdoors with a cup of tea or a bottle of wine. There seem to be a lot of wine in my stories, but we'll go on about that. And you sit and you look out and you see nature at its element and you're going, this is gorgeous, this is what we want. And you're going, is it? Man has changed this. Like there's very few natural landscapes left in this world, in Britain, and there are very few sort of places where you look out where man hasn't sort of altered it. And like if you even go back to the Industrial Revolution, like the landscape didn't exist before then. Well, it did really, but not as we know it, because we lived in these small sort of like settlements and villages, and we didn't go outside that because out there is where all the baddies lived, and they were dangerous. But suddenly you had the Industrial Revolution, and we moved from these settlements and villages to large metropolitan environments, i.e. cities. And no matter how bad out there was, this was even worse. So our preconceived idea of the land and the landscape and how we view it started changing. We started thinking, this would actually start being quite nice. This would actually, this is quite good. This is getting back to nature, because anything that we sort of like view, you think is natural. You only have to walk around South Wales. You're having a wee dander around, you're looking over these hills, and it's great, it's fantastic. And you're going, hang on, you could be walking in old mines, coal mines, slate mines, and those mines themselves have actually dictated the environment they're in, the mountains, the hills. So what we view as being natural isn't. It's like nature hiding our industrialised past And that to me, I find fascinating. And how can I portray that in my work? This was the thing that got me going. How can I portray that in my work? So I started looking at the landscape, and I started looking at how we view the landscape. And the good thing about working with clay is we work with things like mud and oxides, feldspars. They're all natural objects, but they're drawn from the landscape. And I wanted to make work that provoked a feeling, that questioned the feeling about how we view outside. And that's what I did. I didn't really copy landscape, because painters and things like that have been portraying it, and I think they do a fantastic job. But I wanted to produce pieces of work that questioned the whole concept of the landscape. And the way I see it as a way of like a binary opposite. So what I tried to do was introduce that binary opposite into my work, introduce that thing where you sort of go, why is that there? And that why, like for example, like the gold handles or the rims, and that why is sort of like came about for someone. When people are out walking, they look at this beautiful sort of like hills and you go, this is lovely. But why is it like that? Is it natural or is it man-made? So I try to portray that in my work by using glazes, using sort of things that shouldn't belong there. But also at the same time, because I like sort of working with clay, I call myself a ceramicist. The old joke is you can never spell potter, but I call myself a ceramicist because I wanted to work within the format of vessels, because there's a history of vessels and ceramics, but I didn't want to make functional ware. What I wanted to do, I wanted to make pieces that dictated a feeling, that dictated an experience, almost the way a sculpture would work. But instead of working in bronze and iron, I work in clay. And this is what I try to get across, where I would sort of get a piece and people in the public would come along and go, oh, that's nice, that's good. But why is that there? So they're starting to question that vessel. They're starting to question that piece. And hopefully then, when they're out walking through the hills, or if you're going for another walk up in the mountains, you might look out and you might look out on that landscape and you might question it going, is this natural or is this man-made? I don't know. And anytime that you see a stone, or you might pick up a wee stone on the beach or on the hill and you look at that stone again, you go, is this a stone? Or do you think this could be sort of inspiration for a ceramicist or an artist? So I hope all that made sense. And diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.